In 1992, UNESCO designated Angkor in Cambodia as a World Heritage Site. The UN agency also affirmed it as a living site, whose traditional communities were as important as the stones. But now, locals accuse the Cambodian government of the mass forced eviction of thousands of people from those communities. While the government claims each one has voluntarily moved after settling illegally in Angkor, and that relocations are at UNESCO's behest. People in power went to Cambodia to investigate.
"1,200 years ago, on this hilltop in Cambodia, work began on an ornately carved stone temple. Its ruins now colonized by tens of thousands of bats. 3 centuries later, that building was just one in a vast complex of temples, of which the greatest was Angkor Wat, in the heart of the ancient city of Angkor, capital of the Khmer Empire and home to as many as 1 million people. Today, the temples are still revered, even depicted on Cambodia's flag as the defining image of the nation. Beautiful, awe-inspiring and serene. Which makes what's happening to Cambodians who live in Angkor Park today so disturbing.
This is con nhom, cha cái oi rư. Thang này ní, tiếc mũi nè. Thang ní, tiếc ôn.
Áp ra tru được tôm khi cho cạnh đâu mà bạ cho, khi làm từ năm cái quả bọc khi cho thả mà bạ cho.
So what is going on? Who are Apsara? And why are local people so angry with them? To find out, we must go back to 1992. As Cambodia emerged from the ravages of the genocidal Khmer Rouge regime and the decade of conflict which followed, the temples of Angkor were in a perilous state, damaged by years of uncontrolled looting and the depredations of the encroaching forest.
In 1992, Angkor was recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The world wanted to recognize the importance of this archaeological site with 100 temples, an incredible hydraulic system. But at the same time, it needed a lot of attention and repairs.
Angkor is located in the northwest of Cambodia, where a protected park was created, covering 400 square kilometers containing the temples, ancient irrigation canals and lakes, and also, importantly, local people.
The communities were recognized. So Angkor is a living site.
An international coordinating committee was set up with UNESCO as its secretariat, and the Cambodian government was required to establish a local management body.
An institution in charge of the daily management of the site with whom we can have some cooperation and some exchange.
That organization is the Apsara National Authority, and with site management in place, looting largely under control, and major renovations underway, in 2004, Angkor was taken off the At Danger list. But there's more to Angkor than architecture, and Angkor's people too had suffered from Cambodia's years of torment. Pranian is 89 years old. She was born here, where she met her husband and settled down. But then, everything began to change. By the late 60s, the Vietnam War was spilling over into Cambodia. And as life in Angkor became increasingly difficult, they moved to Phnom Penh until that city was overrun by the Khmer Rouge and its inhabitants driven out. Instead, they were captured and condemned to 4 years in a Khmer Rouge labor camp until liberated by Vietnamese forces. After 18 more days of walking, they made it home to find 7 family members dead at the hands of the Khmer Rouge, their house demolished and their rice fields abandoned. But they did get help. And so, slowly, like the temples of the park, they rebuilt their life. Other displaced people, like Pov Soka and her family, had found their way back home. But with Angkor Park's rehabilitation came a new challenge: tourism, and the tourist dollars that come with it. Suddenly, Angkor was big business. By 2018, around 4.5 million people were arriving every year. Siem Reap, close to the Angkor site, had grown from a sleepy provincial town to a small city. Its infrastructure has been stretched to its limits. Its people have had to adjust to the excesses of tourism, and official projections suggest that by 2035, as many as 18 million people could visit every year, generating nearly $6 billion annually. But as this lucrative industry grows, some observers detect a growing fracture in the priorities of the people running Angkor.
Apsara do not have clear-cut role in managing the temples. In conjunction with the UNESCO, they seem to set up their own way of doing it, in mainly concentrate on making money.
Son Chai was born in Siem Reap and was a popular local opposition MP until his party was banned by Cambodia's increasingly autocratic Prime Minister, now Senate President Hun Sen.
We're living in 2 different worlds. The world where the powerful able to build anything or have any land they want. But the people who are part of the society, they've been living there for years, centuries. The ancestor, probably the one who built Angkor Wat. Their land was being taken away.
Initially, the tourist boom brought new opportunities to Angkor's locals too. Soka's family opened a roadside stall facing the Angkor Wat moat, and Proniyin and her daughters opened a food stall by the temple, selling traditional Khmer noodles. At the same time, other poor Cambodians moved into the area in search of a better life. New street stalls sold food and local crafts, and tuk-tuk drivers and guides provided services for tourists. To some, it seemed like Angkor was regaining a vibrancy it had not seen since the glory days of the Khmer Empire. But others saw it differently. For Proniyin and her daughters, the first sign that something was afoot came when officers from Apsara arrived at their restaurant. In exchange, Apsara offered them and the other traders a small plot in a car park further away from the temple. So they closed the restaurant, and Apsara built an upmarket tourist complex where the stalls used to be. But it didn't stop there. Across Angkor, more and more stalls were demolished, to the fury of local people. Where once traditional stalls provided a living for locals, they landscaped. And around Angkor Wat, a bustling metropolis in the days of the empire, they created tidy, manicured lawns.
Angkor Wat is a living, ancient temple. Imagine you don't have the people. Imagine you cut down all the trees. Imagine Angkor Wat in that environment. It's not the temple that the Khmer have been proud of. It was going to be just a stone. Make no sense. The people have a right to preserve their way of life. It doesn't make a lot of money living in Angkor Wat, but when you take their livelihood away from them, this is a violation of human rights, absolutely violation of human rights.
And that must concern UNESCO, given its stated commitment to
observance of human rights, mutual respect, and the alleviation of poverty.
Are you aware that stall herders are being cleared out of the site, that people are being moved or just completely kicked out?
We are aware, and when we receive a situation, we request the government and the authority to provide with clarification.
So this has been going on for 2-3 years. Have you told the government that has to stop and these people have to get their stalls back?
Through our decisions, because we have a decision-making process, all issues related to the involvement of local communities has been dealt with by the World Heritage Committee. And that's also the reason why this site is going to be again examined at the next committee.
Hello.
In fact, Apsara had plans that went well beyond removing stalls, as Soka discovered when Apsara officials arrived at her home. Cambodian property records are notoriously incomplete, but Apsara were not there to provide Soka's title deeds. She soon found out. Soka and her family were asked to relocate to a brand new town 25 kilometers away in exchange for an empty plot, 30 sheets of corrugated iron to build a house, and 10 years on social security payments to make up for the loss of their business. What she couldn't understand was why they were asking her to leave.
When Angkor was registered or inscribed as a World Heritage Site, there was recognition by UNESCO and the Cambodian state. 112 so-called traditional villages had the right to remain present. So in other words, people who had been there for decades and generations had the right to stay.
The rules did say no newcomers were allowed to move in. But as one expert advisor told a local TV channel, that rule was seldom enforced.
We were looking at people installing small houses, and then we started to write, please, government of Cambodia, please, Apsara, see by which way you can save the problem of squatters.
In fact, many so-called squatters had actually bought their land in the park, and for whatever reason, Apsara officials had looked away as they built their houses. But that does not alter Cambodia's obligations under human rights law.
The Cambodian state has an international obligation to respect the right to housing of every citizen, regardless of whether that citizen is a member of a traditional village, regardless of whether that citizen has purchased or not the land to which it's living, or as they like to refer them, illegal squatters. Everyone has the same rights to adequate housing.
As a UN body, UNESCO is under a particular obligation to uphold those legal principles. But what they did next was to be seized upon by both Apsara and the Cambodian government. In a letter to the government, UNESCO expressed concern over
more than 500 illegal construction activities,
which, they suggested,
may affect the outstanding universal value of the property.
That letter seems to have been taken as something of a green light by Apsara. Reports started emerging of demolitions of allegedly illegal houses, like this incident in 2017. Or this incident in 2020, when Apsara was videoed destroying several houses in one village, despite the desperate pleas of the families. The evictions slowed during COVID, but restarted in earnest in 2022, when one government minister claimed Apsara had now received 2 letters from UNESCO, warning that Angkor's World Heritage status was at risk from illegal squatters. But the pressure was mounting, and standing up to the Cambodian government is not easy. That threat came directly from Senate President Hun Sen himself. A warning delivered at a graduation ceremony, but directed at the people of Angkor Park. Any refusal to volunteer would have consequences.
Mình mới sắp chết ai Angkor Watត្រូវគេដកចេញពីបេតិកភណ្ឌពិភពលោកឯងច្បាស់ជាដកគ្រួសារនឹងចេញហើយត្រូវធ្វើហើយសម្ពាធពីអង្គការ UNESCO ដែលតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹងការពារក្នុងរមណីយដ្ឋានអង្គរលឺទាំងអស់គ្នាតានេះដែលមានទូរស័ព្ទអនឡាញចេះក៏បងប្អូនឬក៏ទឹងមិនទៅអត់មានចំណងមានអីទេគឺដេញចោលដេញទៅទៅទេម្ល៉េះហើយភ័យប្រត់បិដាយទៅ
Across Angkor Park, evictions had begun in earnest. Home after home was being demolished, sometimes the most personal memories abandoned with them.
Wedding photo.
The critics would argue that Cambodians who used to earn a living there are not wanted anymore. They're being written out of the story in favour of air-conditioned shops and restaurants.
Absolutely, and I think one thing that comes very clear from the latest Cambodian report on the state of conservation, where they speak extremely disrespectfully of those living in poverty, the people who they refer repeatedly as illegal squatters, seem to have no rights in the minds of the Cambodian state.
Government officials insist all 9,000 families who've signed up to leave are willing volunteers. That's not how Povsoka sees it.
It simply cannot be defined as voluntary. Voluntary is when you, out of your own volition, decide to move and leave your home, which very, very few people actually wanted.
So if this is quite a grotesque breach of their human rights, why has UNESCO not said this has to stop now?
That's a good question.
The government claim that all these relocations are voluntary. Do you believe them?
Well, you know, we as UNESCO, we work according to certain standard process. Since there has been some concerns about the relocation program, we have written to government, and this issues has been monitored and brought to the attention of the World Heritage Committee.
If you've known this is going on for such a long time, why haven't you just said this has to stop? Because we believe in human rights.
Let me say then, We believe in human rights. We defend human rights. UNESCO
Except in this
defends
case.
human rights.
So where does that pledge stand beside what's happening to this man?
ខ្ញុំកើតនៅក្នុងភូមិនេះពីខ្ញុំកំណើតកើតមកឆ្នាំ1958ពលឪពុកម្ដាយខ្ញុំទាំងយាយទាំងតាទាំងខាងខ្ញុំទាំងខាងម្ដាយឪពុកទាំងអស់នៅកើតនៅភូមិនេះទាំងអស់
Phuon Mao bought this farmland in 1997 and built a home shortly afterwards, where he has lived ever since. But 2 decades on, it is becoming rather dilapidated.
គេនិយាយមុនបងថាអូនទៅសក់កំណើតភូមិដូនតាយើងនេះអាចយើងនៅរស់តាំងសំជួសជុលផ្ទះសម្បែងបាក់បែកឲ្យបាន
But the rules guaranteeing original residents the right to stay also require people to get formal permission from Apsara to repair or rebuild their property.
ជឿដាក់ប្រាប់គេអត់ឲ្យបំណោះហើយ
In the letter, Apsara claim they can't find his house in old satellite pictures, and so he's no right to replace it.
Can we see the letter?
នេះមើលបានតែមើល
The letter warns Phuon Mao that if he attempts to rebuild his disintegrating buildings without permission, Apsara will take action according to the legal procedures in force. And they invite him, as they've done with thousands of others, to relocate. But it's not the only thing the letter says. It also contains a quite remarkable statement. Apsara's function, they write, is to raise the value and preserve the heritage status of the park,
which can attract more and more national and international tourists to visit and increase revenue.
And they suggest Phuon Mao should abandon his farm and the village of his ancestors to help serve that cause. Apsara's motive is clear.
Their work is to preserve the status so that it can attract more and more national and international tourists to increase revenue. Is that an acceptable way of looking at a World Heritage Site? It's a way of making money, and that's why we're kicking local people out?
Every situation, we take it very seriously. What you've just raised, when it's part of some of the issues that we have discussed with the NGOs that are coming to us. And we have been discussing it, and we will continue to follow it closely and with the attention that we have been putting in the monitoring of all World Heritage sites, including the situation of Angkor.
And while UNESCO awaits the next meeting of the Heritage Committee, back in Angkor, Prunian faces an uncertain future. By they, she means Apsara. It began when they took her restaurant, then last year they came again. They told her she'd have to relocate. But if it was distressing for Prunian, her husband found it unbearable. Prunian says she can't afford the cost of a traditional funeral ceremony, so his ashes remain in her daughter's house. And Prunian is still living in her own home and still refusing to leave. It is perhaps no wonder that local attitudes to Apsara are increasingly hostile and fearful.
The apsara is part of the monster that's scaring all the people who living around the Angkor Park. You can talk to the people about that. They were upset when you mentioned the word apsara.
And all the time, Apsara sticks to its claim that the only people being relocated are incomers who have built homes illegally in the park. And every one of them, Apsara's chief executive assured one TV channel, agreed to the move.
យើងមិនបានទៅបង្ខំពួកគាត់ទេគាត់ស្ម័គ្រចិត្តហើយយើងស្ម័គ្រចិត្តរហូតមកដល់ពេលនេះគឺមានជិត 10000 គ្រួសារដែលគាត់ស្ម័គ្រចិត្តហើយជាក់ស្ដែងជាង 6000 គ្រួសារគាត់បានទៅតាំងទីលំនៅនៅរុនតាអែកហើយ
Runta Ek is a town 25 kilometres away, officially described as an eco-village for sustainable development. It's even celebrated in song. For anyone seduced by the song or the romantic name, the idea of relocation to Runta Ek eco-village might sound attractive. But that would be a mistake, because they're not being offered a home here at all. This eco-village was actually built over 14 years ago for a group of 100 families who were each given a traditional house overlooking the lake and a hectare of land for farming. But for the 6,000 families being moved today from the forested shade of Angkor Park to the new Runta Ek, life will be very different. Here, they're given no farmland or house. They're expected to build that themselves. Apsara do contribute 30 sheets of corrugated iron to each evictee, but that's not much help here. Because the new Runta Ek is a place where corrugated iron homes are frequently destroyed by devastating gales, which often howl across this barren landscape. A place where storms and uncontrolled flooding damage possessions and homes, and where in summer relentless, unbearable heat turns metal homes into burning ovens, resulting in dehydration, illness and hospitalizations. May Navi and her husband lived in Angkor Park for 30 years until they were told they had to leave and move to Runta Ek.
ពីរដ្ឋាភិបាលគេប្រាប់ថាបើយើងត្រូវបដូរផ្លាស់មកនៅដីថ្មីព្រោះនៅចិត្តតំបន់អង្គរគេជាកន្លែងភ្ញៀវទេសចរគេត្រូវការស្អាតត្រូវការ
Navi's husband is a tuk-tuk driver, but the cost of fuel for the commute to Runta Ek means he must stay in town during the week, leaving Navi on her own.
ពេលភ្លៀងខ្យល់កន្ត្រាក់ច្រើនអត់ហ៊ានចេញពីផ្ទះទេក្រៅ Her
daughter also has to rent a room in town. So during the week, Navi looks after her daughter's children. But life in a tin house at 40 degrees can be dangerous. Apsara claim over 6,000 families have moved to Runta Ek and the site is now full. But many of those people have since abandoned their new homes or put them up for sale, while other plots remain untouched.
I visited Runta Ek just 3 days ago. Hardly anyone building a house. They cannot afford to build a house.
Many promised services, such as clean water, are still unavailable to most residents. Single parent Yong Wana had to pay for a basic groundwater pump, money he can ill afford.
សម្រាប់ផ្ទះរបស់ខ្ញុំពេលដែលសាងសង់ដំបូងបំផុតពេលដែលរុះរើមកគឺពួកខ្ញុំគ្មានថវិកាគ្រប់គ្រាន់ក្នុងការសាងសង់ទេ
The People relocated to Runta Ek were promised social security payments, known as the ID Poor Card, but faced with the cost of building a new house, many were left with only one option.
ដូច្នេះហើយពួកខ្ញុំមានតែយកបានសមត្ថៈយកទៅដាក់បញ្ចាំនៅតាមដូចជាបងប្អូនប្រជាពលរដ្ឋមួយចំនួនដែលគាត់មានថវិកានិងគាត់ដើម្បីយកប្រាក់ដើម្បីសាងសង់ផ្ទះ
A year later, when he needed to renew his ID Poor Card, he had to go back to the moneylender and exchange it for his land ownership title.
ការដែលដាក់បញ្ចាំបានប្លង់ដីរបស់ខ្ញុំដាក់ 1,700 សម្រាប់ការបង់សងទៅវិញក្នុងរយៈពេលមួយខែចំនួនការប្រាក់មាន $80 រយៈពេលដែលខ្ញុំបង់ឲ្យគេគឺរយៈពេល 4 ឆ្នាំទើបដាច់ទើបបានប្លង់ដីនឹងមកវិញ
Wana's decision to pawn the rights to his own home was not taken lightly, but he had little choice because so many people are dependent on him.
ខ្ញុំម្នាក់ក្មួយកំព្រា2នាក់ម្ដាយចាស់ម្នាក់កូនប្អូនប្រុសខ្ញុំមកកើតដែលពុកស្លាប់ល្បីហើយក្មេង2នាក់ហ្នឹងគ្នាធ្វើការសំណង់យកកូនមកផ្ញើនៅរស់នៅជាមួយខ្ញុំ
Wana's experiences are far from unusual. Last year, Amnesty International produced a report on the evictions in Angkor Park.
Runta Ek does not comply with the requirements under international human rights law of adequate housing. People were given a barren plot of land with some corrugated sheets of iron, and so many had to enter into serious debt in order to build their homes.
But the government's plans don't stop with Runta Ek. They've created a brand new mass relocation site north of Angkor Park called Pak Sning. This bleak expanse, crisscrossed with a vast network of concrete roads, but no sign of any shade or water, is significantly larger than Runta Ek, and the government says 3,000 families, around 12,000 so-called volunteers, have already been signed up to move here. So, are the lessons of Runta Ek being ignored? Or this time, will UNESCO intervene in line with its stated commitment to human rights?
Have you told them that should stop? That cannot go ahead.
I will stand by what I have said clearly. We are not involved, we do not encourage, and we do not endorse any forced eviction anywhere.
And you do not stop it. That's the point. You have the power to stop it.
Maybe you are not aware. The governance of World Heritage Sites work with some procedures. When we receive a situation which is really of concern, we bring it to the attention of the concerned country, and we also bring it to the attention of the World Heritage Committee.
But in the meantime, the sheer scale of the new relocation project in Pak Sning begs some serious questions, like just how many more people is the government planning to evict from Angkor Park, and who is safe? Officially, it's clear. When Angkor was declared a World Heritage Site in 1992, people living in 112 designated original villages were guaranteed the right to remain. But there's a problem.
We know there are 112, but we don't even know who they are. People forcibly evicted from Angkor didn't know if they were part of the traditional villages who had the right to stay, and no clarity was provided and has been provided to date.
The 112 villages were the villages that were there at the beginning of the inscriptions.
What are the villages? What are their names? Do you have a list?
No, we do have an inventory. In each nomination dossier submitted by any government, or any country, they submit, the list of the village, which, of course, everyone can access through Apsara.
So Apsara have the list?
I think Apsara, you could check with Apsara.
I'm surprised you don't have the list so that you know which village is important and which village has rights.
No. You know how many World Heritage Sites we have? 1,199 World Heritage Sites. So each World Heritage Site has a specific nomination dossier.
We did ask Apsara for the list, but they've not supplied it.
People ought to know what area they can live or they cannot live, or what sort of building they can build. But this information is completely out of knowledge of the villagers.
What we do know is that the government is preparing to move thousands more families from Angkor Park to the bleak site at Pak Sneng. But why? Could these huge sluice gates, newly constructed in Angkor Park, provide a clue? Sluice gates like this one, which looms over the home of Pek Prum and her family. Pek Prum's village, with its new sluice gate, is located right beside an area known as the East Baray, an ancient Khmer reservoir some 7 kilometres long and almost 2 kilometres wide. Dry for centuries, it's now a vital agricultural resource used by local communities to graze cattle and grow rice in the rainy season. But now, as the then Prime Minister Hun Sen explained in 2022, the government has other plans for it.
ដែលយើងចង់ស្ដារឡើងវិញនៅបារាយខាងកើតដើម្បីទម្លាក់ទឹកចូលបើហោចណាស់បើមិនបានដល់30លានម៉ែត្រគូបក៏បានពាក់កណ្ដាលដែរអាហ្នឹងឯដើមជាសវ៉ារ៉ាបន្តកើតដើម្បីឲ្យតំបន់នេះយើងអាចយកប្រជាពលរដ្ឋចេញមកនៅខាងលើរួចហើយយើងអាចទឹកយ៉ាងហោចណាស់មានទឹកមួយផ្នែក
The initial plan was to flood the whole of the East Baray along with the houses and farmlands within it. That would transform the East Baray into a vast lake like its twin, the West Baray. A controversial proposal, not least because of the lack of clarity about why it was necessary, when it would happen, or even exactly what areas would be affected. That became clear when angry protests erupted in the town of Phria Dak, which would be submerged if the whole Baray was flooded. But the protests seemed to provoke Hun Sen to suggest that plans were not yet set in stone, and that perhaps only half the Baray would be flooded.
ដែលទាញយកប្រជាជនទាំងអស់ចេញពីឃុំបណ្ដាក់នោះក៏អត់ទេប្រហែលជាតម្រូវការរបស់យើងមានត្រឹមតែសិក្សាទៅលើបញ្ហាតាក់ទងជាមួយនឹងរឿងគេថាបាតអាងតែប៉ុណ្ណោះ
But even if that turns out to be true, it's of little comfort to many people living in Phria Dak, like 59-year-old Eun Moon, whose rice fields are in the area to be flooded.
បងប្អូនភ័យគ្រប់គ្នាតែខ្ញុំមិនស្រែតំកលែងប៉ុន្តែសំខាន់សម្រាប់ពោះយើងដែលហូបរាល់ឆ្នាំណាចាចេញជីវិតមកយោធ្វើអប្សរាពលិជាមួយវាអស់នោះអស់តាវេទនីក៏មានអុយចូលហូបបានទេចូលមកផ្ដាកនេះស្រែទីនោះទាំងអស់
Meanwhile, the future looks even darker for the people living at the west end of the Baray, which is earmarked for flooding no matter how much the rest of the Baray the government decides to flood. Many of them are original residents, supposedly guaranteed the right to stay. Nearby, we find another neighbour walking disconsolately amid the ruins of her house. Who did this? And what do you feel now about what has happened? Although she now lives in Runta Ek, Hun Hon is still drawn back to what remains of her home here. Next door, Pek Prun is still holding out defiantly, but the huge sluice gate facing her is a constant reminder of the government's intentions.
តែខ្ញុំរស់នៅក្នុងនេះតាំងពីខ្ញុំកើតមកធំដេញក្តីដល់ពេលឥឡូវក្រោយមានច្បាប់អប្សរាមួយនេះបានយើងគេថាអុយយើងដេញភូមិនេះទៅនៅរុនតាអេតែខ្ញុំថាខ្ញុំដាច់ខាតខ្ញុំអត់ទៅទេ
You cannot threaten a family to flood their land if they don't move. That is absolutely illegal.
Can you volunteer to not move if your house is about to be submerged in 3 meters of water?
Exactly. How is that voluntary?
And for those people, one very big question remains unanswered.
Why are they flooding these lands? One thing that the individual residents never got to this day is information as to why these moves, these forced evictions, have to take place.
What is clear is that both Angkor Park and Siem Reap, the burgeoning provincial capital, have a problem. The hordes of tourists, the growing number of hotels and swimming pools, and the effects of climate change are combining to create a serious crisis. In the dry tourist season, there is simply not enough water. But at the same time, the government aims to quadruple the number of tourists over the next 10 years, raising the suspicion that this huge new reservoir has more to do with that ambition than any real conservation plan, including disputed assertions that it will help shore up the temples.
It's hard to know. We haven't gotten access to any of the conservation documents that the Cambodian state claims to have, and we're going back once again to the lack of transparency.
That lack of transparency and Apsara's drive to impose its authority is fueling a growing sense of anger and increasing acts of open defiance, in some cases successfully driving Apsara away. In another group of villages, a series of raids by Apsara men led to an organised bid to explicitly challenge Apsara's authority.
ប៉ុន្តែក្នុងថ្ងៃហ្នឹងហេតុការណ៍ថ្ងៃហ្នឹងគឺអប្សរាគាត់មកមួយឡាន
The Apsara men said they'd come to demolish the house belonging to Vanna's neighbour, but the villagers' patience had finally run out.
គាត់ទាំងអស់គ្នាហ្នឹងគឺមកភូមិនិយាយទៅច្រើនភូមិមែនទែនដែលគាត់មកជួយហ្នឹងគាត់កុំឲ្យរើផ្ទះនេះអីពីព្រោះអីសំណោះដល់គ្នាគេជួនច្រើនដែលចូល500នាក់ដែរតែប្រុសប្រុសសិនអ្នកខ្លាំងគេលើកដៃទៅផ្ទះទាំងអស់តែគ្នាគេថាកុំរើផ្ទះនេះ
It was a scene repeated more than once. Villagers filmed as the Apsara wrecking crews backed down, but moved on to another house owned by this woman, Lang Ter. Apsara threatened to demolish her house too, saying she'd built an extension without permission. But the villagers didn't leave it at that. On the 16th of January 2024, they marched on the provincial hall with a petition that called on the Prime Minister and UNESCO to free their community from the control of Apsara, and declared,
"We live in fear of the Apsara Authority, living without rights on our own land. From today onwards, we'll no longer recognise the Apsara Authority, and we will not allow the Apsara Authority to rule over us anymore."
We repeatedly requested an online interview with Apsara, but they declined. We also sent them a list of written questions, but have had no response. At the end of July 2024, delegates from over 190 nations will gather in New Delhi for the annual meeting of the World Heritage Committee. Angkor will be on the agenda. But while Cambodia claims UNESCO is threatening their World Heritage status because of illegal incomers, perhaps the meeting should confront a more important question, one that runs right to the heart of the fundamental principle underlying Angkor's inscription as a World Heritage Site.
Angkor is a living site, and we cannot understand Angkor without its monument or without its people.
As far as each of these people are concerned, they are original residents of Angkor, the embodiment of Angkor's living heritage and equal in value to every stone in the park. Yet each one of them has been kicked out or threatened with eviction by Apsara, the very organisation charged with protecting Angkor's precious living heritage. So yes, people here do believe UNESCO should be warning the Cambodian government they are at risk of losing Angkor's World Heritage status. Not for their failure to enforce their own rules which ban new constructions, but instead for their ongoing systematic attack on the living heritage of Angkor Park, which helped it earn that status in the first place.